My name is Amanda, and I live in a white two-story house in Miami, America. It stands like a defiant sentinel at the edge of the ocean, glass windows catching the sun's fire every morning. From my balcony, I can see the waves tear into the shore with relentless force, as if even the sea itself is a reminder of persistence and power. That house cost me nearly $850,000, money I scraped together through sleepless nights negotiating deals in New York and managing investments while others partied or wasted their time. A portion of that money came from my father, a man who never gave me much affection but left me a small inheritance when he died. I multiplied it, turned it into more than anyone thought I could. That house was proof that I wasn't just surviving, I was winning. But victories, I've learned, are fragile. They can be stolen in an instant by the arrogance and cruelty of others. My unraveling began with what was supposed to be an act of love. I had planned a tour of Hawaii for my mother, Sandra, the one woman who had never abandoned me. She had carried trays in diners, scrubbed the floors of strangers' houses, and lived her life on tips and exhaustion. All her dreams had been postponed or sacrificed so that I could rise. She had whispered about Hawaii for years, its sunsets, its beaches, the way she imagined standing barefoot in volcanic sand. I wanted to give her that dream, and I spared no expense. I invested $12,000 into the trip, first-class tickets, a luxury villa near the coast, a private guide who promised to take us to hidden waterfalls no tourist ever saw. I thought of everything, down to the wine stocked in the refrigerator and the flowers that would be waiting in her suite. It wasn't just a vacation. It was my gift, my tribute to the woman who made me. The guest list was meant to be small. Close friends, family, people I trusted. I handed over the arrangements to Olivia, a woman I had called a friend since college. She promised me she would handle the invitations, check the details, confirm the names. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But betrayal rarely comes from strangers. It comes from the hands you trust most. When the invitations were finalized, I discovered something that ignited a fire in me unlike anything I'd felt before. My name, Amanda, the planner, the payer, the reason this trip even existed was missing. Erased. As if I were an afterthought, an outsider to my own generosity. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a typo. But when I confronted Olivia, she smirked, eyes glinting like broken glass, and said, "Oh, I thought you'd want your mom to have her moment without you hovering." Her words cut deep, but what cut deeper was the silence of the others. Daniel, who owed me more than I could ever count, and Mark, who once confessed to me in drunken tears that I was the only person who believed in him, they said nothing. They stood there, smug, complicit, watching me unravel as though it were entertainment. It was more than disrespect. It was war. The anger inside me grew sharp, metallic, like a blade forged in fire. My chest burned with it. Who were they to erase me? Who were they to treat me as disposable, after everything I had given, after everything I had built? Their smirks branded me. Their arrogance scarred me. I had been generous, too generous, and they had mistaken my generosity for weakness. That night, I sat in my office staring at the glowing lights of Miami, and I made a decision. If they thought they could humiliate me, I would teach them the cost of underestimating Amanda. I picked up the phone and called the travel agency. My voice was calm, steady, but inside I was seething with a fury that tasted of iron and smoke. "Cancel everything," I told the agent. "Every flight, every villa, every reservation. Yes, even the private guide. Cancel the whole thing." The agent hesitated. "But ma'am, this is quite an extensive." I said cancel it. No one is going to Hawaii. Not my so-called friends. Not even my mother. When I hung up, I almost trembled, not from regret, but from the thrill of control. If they wanted to erase me, then I would erase the entire dream they thought they could steal. The next morning, my mother's tears filled the kitchen. Sandra looked at me as though I had broken her heart myself. "Amanda, why?" I was waiting for this my whole life. I wanted to fold into her arms, to tell her I was sorry, but the fire inside me was stronger. Because, Mom, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady, they erased me. They erased the one who gave it all. And I will never let them think they can take what's mine. Her tears turned into a silence that pierced the air, and then she whispered words that burned into my soul. Don't let them get away with it. They've lived too long off your kindness. That was all I needed. Permission. A spark to ignite the blaze of revenge already spreading through me. From that moment forward, I wasn't Amanda the generous friend, the provider, the one who made dreams possible. I was Amanda the reckoner. And my wrath would not be quiet. I canceled my mom's Hawaii tour. I canceled her long-awaited Europe tour. I shattered every piece of joy they thought they had secured, because if I couldn't stand at the center of that dream, then no one would. I saw the shock in their faces when the news reached them. Olivia's lips tightened into a sneer, but her eyes betrayed panic. Daniel muttered something about lost opportunities. Mark cursed under his breath. They thought I had ruined the dream. They hadn't yet realized that I was only just beginning to ruin them. I sat in my glass-walled living room that night, watching the storm roll over Miami, and I let the thunder echo my fury. Lightning lit up the horizon, and in its flash, I saw myself reflected in the window, hard eyes, clenched jaw, a woman reborn. They erased me from the guest list. I whispered to myself, a vow that hardened with every word. So I erased their world. And now, whether they realized it or not, they had declared war with me. A war I intended to win, dollar by dollar, life by life, until their regret drowned them deeper than any ocean in Hawaii. The morning after I canceled everything, the house felt heavier, as if the very walls carried the weight of my decision. The kitchen smelled of coffee and salt, coffee from the pot still simmering, and salt from my mother's tears. Sandra sat at the table in her faded blue robe, her hands trembling around a chipped mug. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, almost fragile, as though the disappointment had hollowed her out. I hated that I had been the one to place that look on her face. She had spent her whole life sacrificing for me, and now here I was, taking away the dream she had waited decades for. But anger is a strange beast. It doesn't stop to ask who it might wound in its path. It simply devours everything until only the fire remains. Mom, I said softly, leaning against the counter. I know what this trip meant to you. Her eyes, red from crying, lifted to mine. Amanda, I was already packed. I bought new shoes. I told everyone at church I was finally going. Hawaii, Europe. It was going to be my first time leaving America. Do you have any idea how long I've waited for this? Each word was like a knife twisting into me, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't. I do know, Mom. But this isn't about money or tickets or travel. This is about respect. They tried to erase me, and they thought I wouldn't fight back. They thought I'd stay quiet and accept the insult. She gripped the mug tighter, knuckles white. And your answer was to punish me too?
Her question cut deep.
For a moment, doubt cracked through my resolve. But then I remembered Olivia's smirk, Daniel's silence, Mark's smug face. The image of them standing there, erasing me from the guest list, treating me like a child in my own story. My jaw clenched so tightly it ached. Mom, I said, my voice lower now, almost trembling with rage. This is bigger than you. They erased me. They think I'm weak. If I let this go, then I'm no better than the doormat they believe I am. Her tears stopped, and for a long moment, she just stared at me. Then something shifted in her eyes, something I had never seen before. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was fury. You gave them everything, she said, her voice rising like thunder. You paid for their drinks, their flights, their dreams. And what did they do? They spat in your face. Make them choke on their arrogance, Amanda. Don't you dare let them walk away thinking they won. Her words lit a fuse in me, one I had been waiting for someone to ignite. I didn't just want revenge anymore, I needed it. It wasn't enough to cancel a trip. No, I would dismantle their lives piece by piece until they looked back at this moment as the beginning of their ruin. I placed my hand over hers. Don't worry, Mom. They'll regret it. Every single one of them. That afternoon, I drove to downtown Miami to clear my head. The city pulsed with life. Tourists throwing away money in overpriced bars, businessmen barking into phones, women in sharp heels clattering down the sidewalks. And as I walked through it all, I realized something. People only respect power. You can buy loyalty, you can buy smiles, but true respect comes when they fear crossing you. I thought of Daniel, sitting in his Chicago office, so smug in his tailored suit, acting as though the world belonged to him. He had built his little real estate empire on borrowed money and thin ice. I had helped him once, lent him $25,000 when his business nearly collapsed. He promised he'd pay me back with interest, and while he eventually returned the money, he never paid the debt of loyalty. Now I would remind him what debts really meant. Then there was Olivia, with her glossy hair and her luxury boutique in Los Angeles. She thrived on appearances, on people believing she had better taste than anyone else. She lived for whispers of admiration. But whispers can become poison. I already knew which suppliers she depended on, which clients were her lifeline. All it would take was a few rumors, a few shadows cast over her reputation, and she would crumble. And Mark, pathetic, greedy Mark. He had smiled the widest when they erased me, as if it was his personal victory. But I knew his weakness better than anyone: gambling. He had confessed to me once, in a late-night haze, that he couldn't walk away from a poker table even if it was killing him. I had filed that secret away at the time, waiting for the day it would serve me. That day had come. I sat in a cafe, pen scratching against a napkin as I drew their names, their weaknesses, and the ways I could reach them. Daniel, money. Olivia, reputation. Mark, addiction. Revenge isn't chaos, it's art. And I was about to paint my masterpiece. When I returned home, my mother was waiting in the living room, her Bible open on her lap. She looked up at me, no longer the tearful woman from the morning, but someone colder, sharper. "What are you planning?" she asked. I smirked. "I'm planning to take everything from them." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't stop me. Instead, she said, "Good. Don't let anyone think they can erase my daughter." Her blessing was all I needed. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the ocean crash against the shore. The storm inside me mirrored the waves, loud, violent, endless. My phone buzzed with messages from Olivia, Daniel, and Mark. Pathetic excuses, fake apologies, weak attempts to explain why my name had been erased. I didn't even read them fully. They weren't worth my time anymore. I replied only once, to all three, with the same words. "You thought erasing me was funny. Now watch as I erase everything you've built." And then I turned off my phone. The war had begun. I no longer cared about trips or tours or even the dream of Hawaii. What I wanted was blood, not in the literal sense, but in the way that would hurt them more than any wound. Money, status, comfort. All the things they valued would soon rot in their hands. As the clock struck midnight, I whispered into the darkness. "They erased me from the guest list, so I'll erase them from their own lives." And I meant every word. Revenge is not a single strike. It is not a wild swing of a blade. It is deliberate, patient, and merciless, like fire spreading in silence until everything they love is ash. I didn't rush. I calculated. I mapped out every weakness, every blind spot. My so-called friends had shown me their hands long ago, and now I would use their secrets against them. I began with Daniel. Out of the three, he was the most arrogant, the one who carried himself as if money could buy him a crown. He ran a small real estate firm in Chicago, and for years he had bragged about building an empire. I knew the truth. His empire stood on borrowed money, risky loans, and properties he barely managed to flip before drowning in debt. I knew because once, years ago, he had begged me for a loan, $25,000, he couldn't get from anyone else. He had paid it back eventually, but with a smirk that said he thought his success was his alone. Now it was time to remind him that his world was fragile. Through a shell company, I bought one of his properties, a rundown brownstone he had poured too much money into, expecting a huge profit. He didn't know I was the buyer. That was the beauty of it. I closed the deal quietly, then resold it weeks later for significantly less than he had projected, undercutting his market and humiliating him in front of his investors. One bad sale turned into whispers. Investors started doubting him. Clients started backing out. Within 2 months, his firm bled nearly $90,000. I didn't lose a moment of sleep. In fact, I slept better, knowing that every dollar he lost was another apology he could never bring himself to say. But revenge isn't just financial. It's psychological. I wanted Daniel to feel it in his bones. So I called him one evening, disguising my voice. "Daniel, maybe you should be more careful with your deals. People are talking." The silence on the other end was worth more than gold. He knew. He didn't know how or why, but he knew he was being watched, dismantled piece by piece. Next was Olivia. If Daniel's weakness was money, hers was reputation. She thrived on appearances, perfect clothes, perfect hair, her boutique in Los Angeles that she claimed was the pinnacle of luxury. People didn't buy her products, they bought the illusion of status. And illusions are easy to break. I started with whispers. A well-placed comment on social media. A subtle suggestion in a private shopping circle that her exclusive goods were counterfeit. Then I paid a woman in Beverly Hills, one of Olivia's loyal customers, to return a handbag, claiming she had discovered it was fake. That was all it took. Rumors spread like wildfire. Within weeks, Olivia's boutique was drowning in accusations. Clients fled. Lawsuits followed. Suppliers began hesitating to ship products, afraid of being tainted by association. Her empire, built on delicate vanity, began to collapse. By the end of summer, her debt outweighed her profits, and the luxury queen of Los Angeles was nothing more than a desperate woman clinging to threads. I didn't even have to confront her directly. But when I heard she had broken down in her store, screaming at an employee in front of customers, I allowed myself a smile. Aggression isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet rumor that poisons every room they enter. And then there was Mark. Mark, the man who smiled the widest when they erased me from the guest list. I could still see it, his smug grin, his satisfied eyes. He had wanted me gone the most, and for that, I wanted to destroy him in a way that would haunt him every time he looked in the mirror. Mark lived in Boston, far enough away to believe he was safe. But no distance protects a man from his own weaknesses. His was gambling. Years ago, after too many drinks, he had confessed to me that he couldn't walk away from a poker table. That once, he had lost $10,000 in a single night and nearly pawned his father's watch to cover it. I had filed that secret away, waiting for a day when it would serve me. That day had arrived. I paid a man I trusted, a professional player, to lure Mark into a high-stakes game. It was easy. A whisper in the right bar, a suggestion of easy money, and Mark was hooked. He played with desperation, convinced luck was on his side. But luck doesn't matter when the game is rigged. He lost $35,000 in a single night. Money he didn't have. He tried to bluff his way through, begged for credit, cursed when they refused. In the end, he stormed out, his pride shattered, his wallet empty. Word spread quickly in Boston circles. Mark wasn't just a loser. He was a fool. The image of him, broken and humiliated, fueled me. I imagined his smug smile replaced with panic, and I savored every detail. Each act of revenge fed the fire inside me, but it wasn't mindless rage. It was precision. I thought of my mother with every move. Sandra, who had sat in that kitchen, tears streaming down her face. Each dollar they lost, each rumor that spread, each humiliation they endured, it was all for her. Each wound I inflicted was an apology carved into their lives. And yet, I wasn't finished. Revenge is never just about making them suffer. It's about control. It's about showing them that erasing me was the last decision they would ever make without consequences. I wanted Daniel to look at every deal and wonder if I was behind it. I wanted Olivia to walk into her store and hear whispers even in silence. I wanted Mark to shuffle a deck of cards and feel his hands shake with remembered shame. I wanted them to regret the day they decided Amanda didn't belong. And I knew they did. I saw it in their messages. Dozens of texts, frantic calls, pathetic apologies. They wanted to explain, to justify, to beg for forgiveness. I didn't answer. I let their desperation grow. Silence was the sharpest knife of all. At night, I would sit in my Miami house, the ocean roaring outside, and I would sip wine while reading their pleas. My mother, sitting across from me, would shake her head and say, "Don't you dare forgive them." And I didn't, because forgiveness is for the weak. And I was no longer weak. They had erased me from the guest list. So I erased their comfort, their pride, their illusions of control. And this was only the beginning. Months passed before I allowed myself to step foot in Hawaii. Not with them, never with them, but with my mother. The trip I had once canceled out of spite, I reclaimed on my own terms. I rented a villa on the Big Island, one carved into the cliffside with glass walls that looked out over the Pacific. It cost me $7,500 a week, and every dollar was worth it. From the balcony, the ocean stretched endless, and at night the waves hit the rocks like a drumbeat for war. For the first time in months, my mother smiled. She sipped champagne beside me, barefoot in the warm air, and whispered, "I never thought I'd see this place." Her joy gave me peace. But peace was never my destination. Revenge doesn't end with whispers and backrooms or the fall of reputations. It ends face to face, when the betrayers must look at the one they wronged and realize the cost of their arrogance. So I invited them. Yes, I invited Daniel, Olivia, and Mark to Hawaii. I sent the invitations myself, each letter sealed in black, each message delivered with words sharp enough to draw blood. "Come. See what you've made of me." At first, they hesitated. I saw it in their replies. Daniel trying to sound confident but stammering through excuses, Olivia clinging to her fractured pride, Mark nearly begging for forgiveness in his drunken ramblings. But the broken always crawl back to the fire, even when it burns them. One by one, they agreed. And so they came. The night of their arrival, I dressed in white, not a symbol of peace, but of contrast. White against the darkness I had become. My mother stood beside me on the balcony, her hand steady in mine, her eyes glowing with something between pride and fury. When they entered, I saw 3 shells of people who once believed themselves untouchable. Daniel's suit hung loose on him, his confidence stripped away with every failed deal. Olivia's makeup was thick, her eyes red from sleepless nights, her boutique crumbling behind her. Mark looked worst of all, his hands twitching, his eyes bloodshot, his voice hoarse as though he had been shouting at ghosts only he could see. The sight of them filled me with a satisfaction deeper than victory. It was vindication. "Do you see now?" I asked, my voice calm, almost tender, though my chest boiled with rage. "Do you see what happens when you erase me?" They looked at me, but said nothing. Cowards. The ocean roared behind me, as if it, too, demanded their answer. I turned first to Daniel. "Chicago isn't treating you well, is it? Investors whispering, clients fleeing. That empire of yours looks more like a sandcastle, washed away by the tide." His jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. I smiled. "I bought your dream from under you and sold it for scraps. Do you know what it feels like to choke on your own pride? Because I do. And now so do you." I shifted my gaze to Olivia. She tried to hold her chin high, but her trembling hands betrayed her. "Luxury queen of Los Angeles," I said, mockery dripping from every word. "How many customers have you lost this month? How many whispered that your goods were fake? How many doors have slammed in your face? All it took was one rumor, and your kingdom of glass shattered." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. I didn't let her speak. "You wanted me erased, Olivia. Tell me, how does it feel to be the one erased instead?" Finally, I turned to Mark. His breathing was heavy, his shirt wrinkled, his skin pale. "And you," I spat. "You thought you could smile while they cut me out, as if my humiliation was your reward. I know your weakness, Mark. Cards, dice, the thrill of losing yourself. I sent you into that game, and I watched you drown. $35,000 gone in a night. And now? Everyone knows. Everyone laughs at you. He shook his head weakly. Amanda, please. Don't. I snapped, my voice sharp enough to slice the air. You didn't beg for me when they erased my name. Don't you dare beg now. They stood there, silent and broken, the three of them nothing more than shadows of the people who once tried to erase me. And as I looked at them, I realized something. Revenge wasn't just about destroying them. It was about showing them the power they had awakened. You thought I was weak, I said, stepping closer, my heels clicking against the stone. You thought erasing me from a guest list would make me vanish. But I am still here. Stronger, louder, ruthless. And you. I gestured to their trembling bodies. You are nothing. My mother's hand squeezed mine, and I knew she understood. This wasn't just my reckoning. It was hers too. She had suffered their betrayal, her dreams torn apart when I canceled the tours. But now, standing here in Hawaii, she saw the justice I had carved with my own hands. Look at her, I said, pointing to Sandra. You tried to erase her joy, but here she is, smiling. Do you see who won? None of them answered. They couldn't. The ocean wind whipped around us, carrying the scent of salt and fury. I stepped back, my white dress flowing in the breeze, and let silence stretch between us. Finally, I spoke the words I had carried for months. My name is Amanda. You erased me from the guest list, but I erased you from your own comfort, your own pride, your own illusions. And now, I leaned forward, my voice a whisper as sharp as a scream. Now you regret it. They lowered their heads. Not one dared meet my eyes. That was my victory. Not their apologies, not their excuses, but their silence. Their shame. I turned away from them, leading my mother back to the balcony. Behind me, they lingered like ghosts, broken by the weight of what they had lost. The sun bled into the ocean, painting the sky in fire, and I knew it was finished. Revenge had carried me here, and aggression had fueled me, but now I stood free. They could live the rest of their lives in ruin, remembering this moment as the night Amanda showed them what erasure truly means. And as I lifted my glass of champagne and toasted the horizon, I whispered the truth one final time. They erased me, but I erased everything they ever thought they had.